Hey everybody, 𝗙𝗵𝗹𝗲𝗲 here with another video for you, and in this video I'm going to tell you how to teach using analogies. A lot of teachers think that they already know how to teach using analogies and they think it's really easy. Well, yeah, sure. Getting started with it is pretty simple, but today we're going to look at some more advanced techniques and strategies that you might use to help your students learn the topics that you're teaching them and remember them. So let's jump right in. Not only are analogies part of our everyday lives, but they're also a great strategy when teaching something. Analogies use comparisons, and there are some standard ways that most teachers and students understand that they can use comparisons, using more than or less than, using simile and metaphor, which are also types of analogies. And just to review, a simile is when we use the word like or as. For example, we could say, her eyes are blue like the sky. This is a simile. A metaphor is different. A metaphor doesn't use the words like or as, and instead, it says that one thing is equal to another thing. Now, this isn't exactly true. We're not saying that it's 100% equal. We're saying that they are very similar, but in a metaphor, we use language that sounds like we are saying that they are equal. So we might say, her eyes are the ocean. This means that her eyes are blue like the ocean, right? But if we say like the ocean, this is a simile. And if we say that they are the ocean, this is a metaphor. Both of these are types of analogies that we can use. Sometimes there's just a vocabulary word that seems a little too difficult for our students or for the people who we're teaching, and we need to make some kind of analogy to help them understand what it is. I remember when I was learning Russian and someone told me the word dacha. Well, a dacha is basically a country house, but the person who was teaching it didn't know that it was that easy to explain, and they use a comparison instead. And this comparison, this analogy, helped me understand what they wanted to say. So they started talking about a house that's far from the city, where people go to escape from the city, where they go to be in the fresh air and to be out in nature. And I started thinking, wow, in English, we have a concept like this. It's a country house. Or maybe your students don't know what spaghetti is. I think they'll probably know that one because this is an Italian word that is used in many languages in the world now. But if they don't know what spaghetti is, we could use an analogy. We could say, okay, it's noodles from Italy. Right? It's very simple. It's a simple way to explain it because there are many types of noodles from Italy, but this is one of them, and they're famous noodles from Italy. So using this analogy, using this comparison, will help our learners understand the concept better if we're not able to do a direct translation or if they're not able to understand a more complex explanation of what this is. And this brings us to a really important point, that when we're using analogies to teach people, we need to make sure that these analogies are similar enough that they're worth using. Because sometimes people use analogies that are just too far-fetched. They're unrealistic. And that really makes it difficult for people to understand the comparison, the analogy, and to understand the overall meaning of why we even spoke about that in the first place. It usually leaves people more confused than when you started. So don't do that. Overall, when you're using analogies to teach, think of it like this. An analogy should enable your students to establish a meaningful relationship between what they already know and the topic that they are learning. So make sure your analogies are well thought out before you use them in your classroom. In fact, let me give you a strategy with 6 steps that you can use when you're trying to understand if it's right to use an analogy in your classroom or not use an analogy at all. Step number 1 is you introduce the concept that's unfamiliar. So you introduce something new. Next, you try to identify the features of the new thing and the features of the old thing and see where they align, see where the features are the same. After that, you should check to make sure that enough of these features align with the subject matter that we're supposed to teach, right? We want to make sure that they are relevant. So, if you're talking about dogs and cats and they are both pets and we're trying to make this analogy, then the fact that you can walk outside with them probably is not one of the main defining criteria, and it's not necessary to include when we're using this analogy. Instead, we should focus on the fact that it's an animal that lives in your house, right? After we've done that, we've established that it's relevant enough, then we need to map these features. We need to demonstrate how this feature in the old concept equals this feature in the new concept, and show the overlap so that it's easy for students to understand the similarities and so that they can see the slight differences too. Step 5 of using analogies when you're teaching is to show the limits of these analogies, right? Like if we compare cats and dogs as pets, we can still say, well, they're different species. These are not the same animal, right? We have a line that cannot be crossed there. So, for example, dogs and cats have different kinds of claws, right? And cats can retract their claws, dogs cannot. So this analogy will break down if we focus on that feature. And the last step of the 6 steps of using an analogy in the classroom and using an analogy to teach is to see where this concept is applicable and how well it helps us understand the information that we're trying to get across to our students. We should be able to draw some conclusions using this analogy, and we should be able to make some evaluations using this analogy. If we can't, it's probably not very useful. So to say it in a different way, teachers should use the real-world experience of their students and connect that to a similar concept that helps them understand the general topic that we are explaining or introducing to them. Analogies are a highly effective instructional device that we can use in a classroom and outside of a classroom. So if you're a teacher, then you've probably used this before and you probably haven't put much thought into it. However, if you think a little deeper and you use the 6 steps that I've just presented to you, then you might actually be able to get really big results using really cool analogies. And I think you'll agree with me that analogies are something that stick with people for a long time. Because the next time that they think about this topic, they're going to say, oh, I remember when my teacher compared this and this, right? When we compared cats and dogs, when we compared teachers and policemen, when we compared, it doesn't matter what you're comparing, comparisons and analogies are so effective and great to use in the classroom. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that it was at least a little bit helpful for you and that you'll be able to take some part of it and use it in your own classroom. That's it for this video. Make sure you click subscribe and click that bell button so you get notified when new videos come out. And if you like this video, let me know in the comments down below. We've got a lot of new stuff coming out, and if you have questions that you'd like me to answer or topics you'd like me to cover, I would be more than happy to. So I hope to see you in our next video, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.